I'm going to demonstrate or review the multiple forms demo program written in Visual Basic. This program allows you to control multiple forms in a project. As you see here in the Solution Explorer window, I have my level 1 of this fictitious game, but I also have a splash screen, I have a directions form, and a little controller that will allow me to move an object around the screen with arrow keys, and an about form. And I have a code module that looks like this. All of these forms are added to the project by going to the menu command Project Add Windows Form. And when you do that, you can name your forms with descriptive names like about, directions, etc. You should use a capital first letter. The module is added by clicking the menu command Add Module. Okay, let's run the program to see what it does. The first form that pops up in this project is the splash screen, which is where you would type the name of the program, perhaps the version. You would not type lots of text here, and you certainly wouldn't put directions. Maybe you would have a button or something that allows the person to go to the directions, but you certainly would not make this form busy. By using the correct code behind the scenes, you can allow the user to proceed to the main level, or the main form, by pressing any key on the keyboard or by clicking anywhere on this window to continue. We'll see that code shortly. In this case, I will click in this gray area here, and this causes an input box to pop up in this particular program. This input box allows me to type in my name and proceed forward, so I'll do that. And the next thing that comes up is level 1. And a controller pops up also. So both of these forms popped up at the same time. You can have multiple forms on the screen at once. Notice how this controller form is not as large as level 1. And notice how it's about 20 pixels to the right and evenly lined up vertically with level 1. My code will show you how to do that. In this silly game, I can click these buttons on the controller form to move my picture box around the screen. And each time I click a button, it adds a point, which is displayed up here in the text property of the form, and so on. At any time, I can click the menu command Help About to bring up yet another form that talks about this program. Most of the same things that you did on the splash screen should be here on the About form, such as the version of the program, the author, the company, the copyright date, etc. At any time, I can close that form by clicking the X in the upper right corner, or you could provide a button that somebody clicks to close it, or you could just have them click anywhere to close it. But I could bring that About up again. And there's also a form that pops up that contains the directions, as you see here. It's nice to have a separate form show people how to run your program in case they forget or don't have a printed user manual. Again, this is closed by clicking the X. It is standard to always place About at the bottom of the Help parent menu command. And it's just as it's standard to always put Exit at the bottom of a file menu. Something else curious happens when I try to close this program. If I click this menu command File Exit, everything that's open and visible will close, including any background music that's playing will stop playing. But what happens if I click this X versus what happens if I click this X? Well, as you would suspect, if I click this X, the controller goes away, but the main form stays open. If this X is clicked, that means I want to quit the program just as I would have if I clicked file exit. So my code will show you how to close both of these windows if I click this X. Currently, this program's a little glitchy because if I click this X, there's no way to bring that controller up again. I should have provided a way to do that, but I didn't. Okay, let's pretend that we want to close the program and we lazily click this X instead of file exit. If I click this X, this program brings up an advanced message box that instead of the button OK, it provides a yes or a no. If the user clicks no, because they are not sure that they want it to exit, the program is still running. See that? If, however, they click this yes button, the program will indeed exit, just as if they had clicked file exit. There's a difference between closing a form, also known as a window, versus closing the whole program, also known as an application. You will see in the code that is handled in two different ways. Now I'm going to show you, take a look at the code that runs all of this. In the splash screen that came up first, I created a reusable method named advanced2game, and I call that method from these different methods here, making it just a little bit cleaner and more efficient here in this code window. Whether the person presses a key on the keyboard, or they click anywhere on the form, or they click on that message, on that label that was on top of the form, anywhere that they click, or any key that they press, will cause this method here to be called. And taking a look at this method, the current form is turned invisible with the me.hide call statement. And me is a reference to the current form whose code window you're in. So instead of calling this splash.hide, I refer to it as me.hide. Typing splash will cause an error message. See, it's squiggly underlines. So I have to type me.hide this to work right. To open up another form, you would type the name of that form .show. Just like messagebox.show, because really a message box is just a form in Visual Basic behind the scenes. Okay, I also bring up the controller, and I'm also getting cute here by making sure that the controller is placed 10 pixels to the right of the left edge of the main form. And they're lined up vertically with this line of code right here, controller.top equals level1.top. In the main window, in the main level, in its code window, we have an input box being used to allow the person to type in their name. An input box, remember, was a little window that pops up, allowing me to type something into it. And I'm storing that name into a variable that I named gUsername. Notice that there is no dim statement for gUsername anywhere on this page. That's because it's a global variable. It's good style to use the lowercase g in front of the name of a global variable so that everybody that's working on the project knows that that's a global variable. I'll introduce where that's declared later. And then also notice that I have these methods form closing and form closed. These methods can be used to give the user a chance to chicken out if they really didn't want to exit the program when that X was clicked in the upper right corner. When the X is clicked, the form1_closing method executes. So any code that you put in here gives the customer one last chance to avoid closing the program. By using this thing called an advanced message box, I set it equal to, I set the variable answer, I should say, equal to whatever was clicked on the message box. If you remember, there was a button that said yes, and there was a button that said no. If the yes is clicked, the special number 6 is used behind the scenes in Visual Basic and stored, in this case, in the variable answer. If the word no was clicked, the special number 7 is stored. Even though we won't study it in more detail, by typing e.cancel equals true here in the if statement, that prevents the whole project from closing. But if the yes is clicked, then the whole application does indeed exit. The last thing that I need to introduce here is the code that we see in the module, the code module. A code module is a code window that has no interface. It's a place where we put reusable stuff. In this module, I have a reusable function that I named roll dice. This function, because it is public, it can be used in any other form of this project. That's very handy, and it's good style to use reusable functions. If a function is ever private, like perhaps this function here, splash mouse click, because that's private, you can't call that method from another form. You can only call it from the form that you're in. So in the case of stuff that goes into a module, you want them to be public, because the whole purpose of putting something in a module is so that it can be reused over and over again in other forms. The other thing, though, that we have here in this module are 2 global variables. They're not really good style, even though they're reusable. That's the exact reason that they're not a good style for variables. Unlike methods, variables can get messed up. In a large project that several people work on, if those people work from home or different offices, as happens a lot in the computer science industry, or if programmers aren't good communicators and they don't like typing comments and documentation, which is unfortunately very common in the computer world. Lots of computer workers are not the best communicators, and if you are a good communicator as a computer scientist, you can really go places. Out in the real world, they love computer programmers that can talk to others and get their point across. Well, anyway, we have 2 global variables here, and by typing public instead of dim in the declaration statements, and for good style using the lowercase g here, this makes the scope of these variables so wide that they can be used in any one of these projects. So for something that has a score that builds up from one level to another level to another level, you probably want to use a global variable, at least until you study the language Java that doesn't allow global variables. But in Visual Basic, it's okay once in a while to use a global variable with my permission. If you have any other questions, see the lecture notes or ask me at an appropriate time.